Hello, my friends. Welcome to the world of the creepy and the caffeinated, of conspiracies and coffee. Welcome to Tales from the Dark Roast. So, welcome to the very first episode of 2022. As you can tell from the intro music, I started to make some minor changes in the show's format, and I'm also trying out some new ideas as this year progresses. First off, let me introduce myself. I'm William, or as I was calling myself in the first season, Mortimer James. It was a lot of fun using a pseudonym, but I decided it was just a bit too quirky for my taste, and I honestly got tired of editing out my real name from the episodes. So, to quote the world's greatest sailor, I am what I am, and that's all that I am. Second, the new music was graciously supplied by my good buddy and a former guest, Jason Whiteley. He worked with me to come up with something fun that was a reflection of a ton of different ideas and influences. If you liked it, be sure to hop over to his SoundCloud account under the name of Van-Morrisey. I'll put a link below so you can come and check out his other music. And again, Jason, my man, I can't thank you enough for the work you put in. Next up, our base format is going to roughly stay the same, but I'm going to be opening up the interviews this year to friends of friends and other people that have been suggested to me. This will let me bring in people that have stories I've never heard and obviously open up my pool of interviewees. In fact, if you're listening and you'd like to share your story, reach out to me on Instagram, YouTube, or shoot me an email because I'm always down to hear about creepy things that have happened to other people. All right, we're all set with the updates, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's show. I've been trying to peg down this guest for the better part of 6 months, but between life, schedules not lining up, or sick kids requiring our attention, I was beginning to worry it wouldn't happen. Now, though, the stars have aligned, Mercury is in retrograde, or some such, and finally coming down onto the Dark Roast is my good friend from high school who moved out of state and became a ghost hunter in his spare time. In fact, he worked with a team that was affiliated with TAPS of Ghost Hunters fame. During his time, he got to investigate what many consider one of the most haunted hospitals in the country, Waverly Hills Sanatorium? Yeah, Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm stoked to bring him on the show now and hear some of the experiences he had while investigating there. So, welcome to the Dark Roast, Mr. Chris Hughes.
How are you doing, man? Hey, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. And you're right, it's been a long time coming for this episode, this interview.
Yeah, dude, it was a long journey to get here. I know we got real stoked about it real early in probably about towards the last 2 or 3 months of last year. And just every time something would happen, I'd either have to leave early or go to work or sick kids. So
yeah, my children are always sick. I don't know what the deal is, but for the moment, everything is perfect. So it's good timing.
Hey, especially during this period of the pandemic and stuff, man. Anytime everyone's hearty and hale, you can't complain. So. But I saw you were drinking something from a mug there, but I get the feeling it's not coffee right now, huh?
Yeah, I don't know if this is allowed or not, but I'm not drinking coffee right now. But what I am drinking is the world's best hot chocolate. So for anyone out there listening, if you're looking for some really great hot chocolate, Land O'Lakes, who makes the butter, they make impeccable or wonderful hot chocolate. So definitely check that out.
See, I'm a cheapskate when it comes to hot chocolate for whatever reason. I think my favorite is like the Swiss Miss stuff that you could buy like everywhere with the little crinkly marshmallows.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff will last for eternity for sure.
Yeah, there'll be the cockroaches, that stuff, and Twinkies. That's it. So, sorry, I am drinking. My daughter actually for Christmas got me a sampler pack off the internet of like, I think it's 9 different countries for like 9 different types of coffee. So I'm drinking something from Papua New Guinea, which is really, really good.
That's fantastic. That's a great Christmas gift.
Yeah.
My go-to coffee is normally McDonald's coffee in the morning. It's cheap and good, and I don't know what it is about McDonald's coffee, but that's my go-to.
I'm not gonna lie. If we're talking fast food coffee, I actually really enjoy Taco Bell's coffee. Now that they serve coffee, or now that they serve breakfast, their coffee's not bad.
I'll have to give that a try. I definitely would have not associated Taco Bell with good coffee, but I'll take your word for it.
I mean, I usually drink my stuff black anyway, so you know it doesn't matter if it tastes like sludge. I'm just looking for something that's dark and going to wake me up. So I
Fair.
may not be the best judge of what's good coffee for fast food. So, but so yeah, man, when did you get into ghost hunting? Because I don't think when we knew each other in high school and hung out, I don't think we ever talked about anything spooky or paranormal. So
Yeah, most of our conversations were about punk rock music and skateboarding at
yep.
that time in our lives.
And
You
who
know,
was the
but
new kid in hallway one, you know?
yeah, that's right. But you know, to kind of gets reinforced your intro there. You know, we moved to Nashville in 2008, and I didn't really know anyone when we moved here. You know, we moved from Tampa to Nashville, and so I joined this ghost hunting group based out of Clarksville, Tennessee, just on a whim. I was, you know, decided that I was going to, you know, kind of buy into the popularity of what was happening there. I've always been kind of fascinated with the paranormal, mysteries, you know, in general, things that are unexplained. And yeah, so I joined this ghost hunting group out of Clarksville, and I was with them for maybe around 2 years total, and started as an investigator, kind of just, you know, going along with them to uh, mostly residential areas. You know, we have a lot of great history here in Tennessee, so we definitely went to some interesting places around that are, you know, somewhat popular locations for just history and that kind of thing. But the majority of our cases that we went to were residential, and it's, you know, people contacting us through the website or, you know, the web forums, mentioning that their children had seen things in their rooms, or they've been experiencing things, you know, while sleeping, and you know, all those kinds of stuff. So yeah, but it was definitely a fun experience for sure. It reinforced a lot of my interests and beliefs in the paranormal with my experiences while I was there for around 2 years. And at one point, I got to become, you know, their tech manager, you know, really kind of just handling the technology aspect, and, you know, reviewing the you know, all the video recordings and DVR footage that we would get at the end of evenings. So I got a first kind of look at the evidence that we would capture for these cases and compile those, you know, for our clients, which were always free, by the way.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a great time and met some really cool people, and got to experience a side of life that a lot of people don't. And you know, yeah, you know, just going to be a part of that for a while. I think it was definitely a lot of fun. Not something that I could do long term, you know, late nights, and takes a lot of time for sure of, you know, recording, you know, footage and communication with the client and back and forth and driving, you know, a lot of travel. So it was short lived, but definitely worth it for the 2 years I was there.
Oh yeah, and especially as your kids get older and everything, you got to put more time into them, you know.
Absolutely.
When they're
Yeah.
super little and they're sleeping all the time, it's like, oh, it's not too bad that daddy's gone at night. But
Yeah. And now that we
so
got two, you know, my wife Rachel needs backup for sure. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So what was the name of the group, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, the name of the group was the Clarksville Ghost Hunters, you know, super original. But
Okay.
you know, I think you mentioned this in the intro too. We were affiliated with TAPS, which happened pretty early on when I joined the group, within a couple of weeks of me starting. And I don't know how prestigious of a title that is, you know, a TAPS affiliation. That's probably more common than, you know, maybe what I think it was. But essentially, if there was a case that was reported to TAPS, which I think they were based in the Northeast somewhere, I can't remember where.
Rhode Island, I believe.
Rhode Island. Okay, yeah. And you know, so they receive calls and cases from all over the country and the world. And so they would reach out to affiliates. So if there was a case here, you know, let's say in Louisville, Kentucky, or somewhere in this area, they would reach out to us. We would go investigate, report back our findings to them, and, you know, whether if we, you know, if we recovered the appropriate amount of footage, or, you know, things that they needed to check whatever boxes to film an episode of Ghost Hunters, you know, they would do that. And they actually did that twice that I can think of.
Oh, wow.
during the time that I was with the Clarksville Ghost Hunters.
Oh,
So
dude. So you guys were almost like location scouts, but you were like
yeah,
paranormal
that's a great way to
scouts for
put it.
taps.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really cool place called the Octagon Hall that is in the Bowling Green, Kentucky area. And that was kind of our home base in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And a lot of great stuff happened there. History, Civil War, really cool structure, lots of activity. And Taps definitely came and filmed there. And I think recorded some pretty good stuff there too. So if there's any
Nice.
Ghost Hunters fans out there that are familiar with that show and have access to previous episodes, check out Octagon Hall and Bowling Green, Kentucky.
I'm not gonna lie. I probably saw every episode for probably the first 4 or 5 seasons. So there may be a chance that I saw that one without ever realizing it. So
Yeah, I don't think it was as interesting as like the St. Augustine Lighthouse, and some
mhm.
of those other kind of big deal episodes that they had, but it's definitely worth a watch.
Oh man, I really want to get back out to St. Augustine because I've visited, but never as like a ghost hunter. It was always
Mhm.
just visiting during the day with friends or family, or actually playing mobile games on my phone, going out there to catching the Pokemon and doing Ingress. So
Yeah, I think St. Augustine might be one of the most haunted cities in the United States,
that
and
and like Savannah.
yeah, I can see that for sure too. Yeah, it's something
Nice.
about the East Coast and hauntings.
Oh, dude, all that Southern history, man.
I guess so. Yeah.
That creepy Southern Gothic vibe going on for sure. So, but dude, so how long were you with the group before you guys tackled Waverly Hills?
So I was with the group for about 2 years total before, it was just kind of too taxing on my lifestyle. And, we had our first child around then too. Plus I was joining the military around that time as well. So, but I would say about a year and a half in probably, that time I was, tech manager and kind of running their tech side. And, that may have been our biggest investigation. So I was trying to nail down like what, what year, what date it was that we went, but it was so long ago, almost 15 years ago, I want to say is when we went.
Oh
So
man.
I can't remember what happened last week half the time, Billy, but
Yeah.
it was definitely between, I think it was around 2008, 2009, if the
Okay.
mathematics lines up correctly for that. But so yeah, about a year and a half in, and we were lucky enough to get access to the entire building, just our group for the whole night. And yeah, it was on a Friday night, and it was, gosh, it was a lot of fun. When we showed up and we had to wait outside the gate. So the location for Waverly Hills is a little bit southwest of Louisville. So it's kind of in a really unassuming location. It's kind of a small town, and you drive up this big driveway and you get to these gigantic gates. And so we had to wait outside the gates for about 30 minutes for the owners to come down and let us in. So we're out there taking pictures, and it's getting kind of stormy outside. There's like dark clouds and, kind of heat lightning happening. We're like, oh, this is like the perfect scenario for what you want,
Yeah.
for something like this. It was really kind of coming together. So we're out there at the gates waiting, kind of goofing off, taking pictures, and we see this car coming down the path there. It's a pretty long path from the gate to the building. And so the gate opens up, and the car the car comes out, and they just leave. And they're kind of hauling butt. We're like, what was that? We're thinking they were coming down to let us in. And the person just left. They didn't say anything to us. They didn't even look at us. Just drove off. And we were like, what in the hell? So the gates are open. So we drive up and we go to the main building, and we go inside, and we're talking to the owner, and we're like, who was the person that just drove past us? And she goes, oh, that's, so and so. I can't remember her name. She's brand new. She had a rough night last night, and she was ready to go. We're like, oh my God. So yeah, that
What
poor
a what
gal,
a
she did
what
not
a
look
great
like.
way to start your investigation, though.
Yeah,
Someone literally scared or terrified or done and just leaving.
yeah, she was done. I don't know if she came back, post that evening, but apparently she was brand new, had a rough night, and was ready to get the hell out of there. So, my first thought was, oh, that was some sort of like ploy, or I don't know, like they're staging something to kind of set us up for, you know, some excitement. But I think it's pretty serious, because I talked to a few people after that worked there, you know, pretty regularly, and they, you know, told me about their experiences and the things they go through just being security, you know, or walking the halls. And it sounds like a pretty stressful place to be, you know, employed at on a regular basis, honestly. So especially if you're not really into paranormal and you kind of just need a job, you know, and that, I would imagine that area of Louisville probably doesn't have a ton of employment. So
you take what you can get, but
yeah, exactly.
So she leaves, you guys approach the owner, and she's telling you, oh, rough night. And
yeah, you know, at that point, you know, I think it was the new owners, they bought it in 2001 from what I remember them telling us. So they've been there for a while, you know, they've owned the building, they had, you know, security, they had, you know, their business set up, you know, because, you know, they are a business, they're making money off of people coming to visit. And, you know, we had to pay to lock down the building for the entire night. I forget what the final cost was that time, but so, you know, they are business owners. And at that time, they were renovating the building to turn it into some sort of like bed and breakfast or condo. I think their end goal was to renovate the building because they were putting new windows in. You know, it was a very open air type of environment, you know, even back, you know, in the early 1900s when the building was operational. But so they're putting brand new windows in, and they were trying to clean things up and I think turn them into condos for a bed and breakfast, which just seemed kind of absurd. But I don't know how far they've gotten since then. But that was their game plan, at least back then at that time.
Yeah, I was reading on Wikipedia and doing a little research about it. And like, there have been talks to turn it into a prison. One guy was talking about building like a 150-foot statue of Jesus, like the one in Rio de Janeiro, the one up on the mountain. Like, there were all sorts of talks about turning this thing into different, you know, different types of venues and, you know, religious places. And I'm like,
doesn't surprise me one bit. I don't think anyone has a solid game plan or really realizes the scope of what's going to take to turn, you know, a building of that size into something like that. But, you know, just a quick history, I guess, for the folks that are listening that maybe don't know much about Waverly Hills. So the building opened in 1911 and was operational until 1960, 61.
61.
And yeah, so it was a, you know, it's a tuberculosis hospital, you know, for TB, for treatment, essentially, you know, a sanatorium. So I guess the idea was that they were going to house all these people in this gigantic building, and that, you know, at that time, fresh air and sunlight and, you know, all these kind of open air environments would help with, you know, all the ailments and symptoms that come along with tuberculosis. So I think it definitely, at least at the start, you know, what the it was, the idea was, you know, kind of a safe haven for people. But ultimately, you know, with the amount of deaths, which I think they're estimating between 50 and 60,000 people had died from tuberculosis, you know, during that pretty short time span. You know, there's only, what, 50 years that it was open and operational for, and to have 50 to 60,000 people die from tuberculosis, and maybe it was even more than that, I don't know. But you know, that's a lot of
just
people
in that one area, no less.
Yeah, one area. And, you know, so, you know, and post the treatment of, you know, trying to get folks out there in open air and, you know, just having a nice place basically to pass away, I think was kind of what the goal was. But, you know, there's also a lot of really shady things and experiments and surgeries and things that happened at that hospital as well that don't get talked about as much, but I think are kind of a part of the fabric of the trauma that happened at this hospital, and you know, contributes to the deaths and the severity of, you know, what people went through and experienced at this place too. So pretty fascinating history.
Definitely lends itself to the whole haunting thing as well, because they say with trauma and, you know, deep emotional things, you know, experiences will leave that imprint or that, that chance for a haunting. So
Mm-hmm.
with that many deaths, that's a lot of opportunities for something to latch on and stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're the building itself, it's a two-story structure, brick, of course they used brick for everything back then, concrete, and just gigantic windows because of that kind of open air environment, and has a really kind of art deco kind of gothic, I don't know if that's the right art
Yeah.
terminology, and I'm not an architect by any means, but it's a really interesting building to come up to. It has a very scary vibe when you walk, when you drive up and see this structure, and it has a lot of like pillars and things of weird, like flying creatures and things you would see in a movie. You're like, what in the hell is going on here? But the visual of this place and what it looks like totally matches up with what the lore of in the history of what's happened here and what people claim to be a part of the history of what's happened at Waverly Hills. It's a really cool place. Anyone that's traveling through the Louisville area needs to go check this place out just for your own personal enjoyment, for lack of better words.
So if you're going for a haunted hospital, it looks like a haunted hospital.
Yeah, that is your stereotypical haunted hospital for sure.
Nice. So when you guys get in and you set up all your gear and you start investigating, did you guys section it off, or did you just kind of spread out, or did you guys attack it with a game plan? Like, how did you do it?
Yeah, we were fairly seasoned investigators at that point. The group had been around long before I was a part of it. So we definitely came in with a game plan. We got a tour of the building early on once we got there to kind of get an idea of the layout so we wouldn't get lost, because it's gigantic.
Yeah.
You could walk around the entire night and never see the same place twice if you wanted to. So yeah, we kind of set up, we got a game plan, we had a game plan going in. There was maybe 10 of us total within the group. And I actually brought a friend with me who was very skeptical, of the paranormal and the idea of, some of the claims that I was telling him about that I experienced in this group. So he joined me, and I'll tell you about his experiences throughout our interview here. But so he was really the only guest outside of the rest of the group that was there. So we were, locked and loaded, man. We had, the place sectioned off. Being in tech, I had DVR cameras all over the place. And if those that are familiar with the layout of the building has maybe watched, some episodes on TV about Waverly Hills, there's kind of a central hub in the middle, and from there there's offshoots, essentially like long hallways from the central hub. So you can run a camera centrally down these hallways, and capture footage all the way down the hall, which was kind of part of our game plan. Is we had around 6 cameras on each area of the level, so that's a lot of footage to review at the end of the night. But you only go to Waverly Hills once, as a group like this, so we overdid it for sure. We stayed in pretty small groups, and that way we would not contaminate recordings of each other in different areas of the building. So, and we were pretty organized about who was where and who was with someone, and you kind of have a battle buddy essentially, so you're not roaming the building by yourself and getting lost or having something awful happen to you without backup. So yeah, we set up shop kind of downstairs, and some of the bigger open air areas, and then just ran cameras down all these long hallways. And some of the things that we did to try to capture evidence, and I saw this, I can't take credit for it because I saw it on an episode somewhere about Waverly long before I was a part of a ghost hunting group, but there was a crew that visited Waverly some time in the past, and they were running lasers down the hallways. And what they were capturing and what we captured was the same thing, was dark shadows breaking the laser beams, moving from one room down the hallway to the other room, to the other side, essentially.
Oh, dude.
So and these hallways are incredibly long. There's, gosh, I don't know, 20 rooms, maybe plus on each side, each hallway section. So it's really hard to, you know, capture the depth of field that you need, to really get good visual evidence, from something way down there when your camera's way over here. So
Yeah.
using a laser, you can kind of see when things are moving and when things are happening and zero in on those spots when you're reviewing the footage. And that was by far my favorite of the experiments that we did, because we were able to capture things breaking that plane and breaking that laser when you don't have any investigators in that section, and you're seeing things, dark shadows basically moving from room to room, breaking that plane. It's a pretty fascinating thing to experience for sure. So
Oh man, I
I think
couldn't.
visually that was our best captured evidence that we got. And it was very similar to what these other investigators captured too while they were there. And I was actually using a cat toy laser.
I was just about to ask what you were
Yeah,
using.
super high tech, because I wasn't thinking, when we got there, and I was like, I had this like laser idea that I wanted to run, and I didn't bring any damn lasers with me. So like, like where do you buy lasers anyway? So I went to Petco before we went up to Waverly and bought all their cat lasers, and ran some duct tape around the button and just laid them there essentially next to the camera down the hallway. Super high tech, but it definitely worked.
Hey man, high tech doesn't mean that it has to be complicated, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a brilliant idea. You just MacGyvered the hell out of it, and
Yeah.
you made it work and caught good evidence to boot. So
Yeah, we did. That was pretty cool. So a lot of us, we're walking around in groups of two.
mhm.
And as far as audio evidence, because obviously it's a big part of investigating our EVPs. And I know you talked about this in previous episodes. So hopefully most of your listenership has, is somewhat familiar with the idea of EVPs, but,
Which is
we're
a
walking around with,
electronic voice phenomenon. Yeah.
yes, thank you. Perfect. And, which is a really fascinating way of capturing sound and evidence and people speaking that you can't see. And we've had a lot of success with that with the Clarksville Ghost Hunters in the past, especially in residential settings. We're able to kind of leave those in rooms and, over periods of time and capture things and ask questions and get responses occasionally too. So we did capture some good EVPs, but with Waverly Hills at the time, not all the windows were set in place. So we were getting a lot of audio from the lightning and the rain and just the wind. So it was really a difficult thing to capture. But some of the first floor, some of that's kind of blocked off. And we were able to capture some really interesting conversation between people that were not in the room with us. It was hard to make out what they were saying, but it was clearly kind of a volley conversation back and forth between two people. And I'm trying to remember exactly what this room was, what its purpose was, but it was some sort of administrative room, likely
Mhm.
for, the staff that worked in the hospital on the first floor. So that was really fascinating to capture that audio. And that was really early on in the investigation. We were kind of walking around, we we're asking questions. We weren't really getting a lot of things happening early on in the investigation, just there wasn't a lot of kind of things moving, and there wasn't anything worth noting at that time, at least. So to look back and get that EVPs was pretty fascinating. But I wish we were able to really understand what they were saying, but it was more like whispering, and it was kind of a volley back and forth, and it almost sounded like they were talking about us being in the room with them, but it was hard to hear what they were saying. It was like they were noticing us, or they were observing us in their space. So that was pretty creepy, but we didn't review the evidence until after the fact. So we didn't even know that was happening, until much later in the investigation. But
Which is what a lot of people say with EVPs. You don't notice it at the
yeah,
time because you're doing the investigation,
absolutely.
and then it's afterwards when
Yeah, it's
you're
after the
pulling it all
fact,
up.
which,
So
it's kind of counterintuitive, because you almost want to know that you're receiving information at the time so that you can kind of follow up on what you're hearing. And there has been some crews that I've seen on TV, I think even TAPS, Ghost Hunters, that have been able to do that successfully, where they can review their evidence quickly and kind of follow up with what they're hearing. But I mentioned my friend that went with me on the
The
tour.
skeptic, right?
The skeptic, yeah. And so we were walking around pretty early on, and we're kind of in the same area of the building, the first floor, kind of administrative section where a lot of the doctors and nurses probably spent most of their time. And we were just walking down the hallway, and he had a flashlight because it's pitch dark
Right.
in the building. There wasn't there was some lights that they had set up inside of there, so if you needed lights, they had some things you could access. But for the most part, it's 12 a.m., 1 a.m. in the morning, you're walking around this gigantic building without any lights, so your flashlight is kind of your best friend. So he and I were kind of tagging along behind the rest of the crew. There's maybe 5 or 6 of us, and he shone his flashlight, or beamed his flashlight inside one of the rooms, and he jumped into me because he's to the right of me. He's shining his flashlight into the room to the right, and he kind of reactionary jumped and almost knocked me over into the room to my left. He's like, oh my God, what the hell was that? And I'm like, what did you see? And he claims to this day, what he saw was a nurse inside of that dark room staring at him, wearing the typical, I guess, 1940s nurse hat,
Yeah,
and the white outfit, and with dark eyes, staring at him or looking at him when he's shown his flashlight into that room, which, for someone to experience something like that is absolutely terrifying.
oh God, yeah.
Especially when, they disappear right after you do that and there's no one in the room. So to experience something like that is life-changing, for anyone, especially, even someone that believes in the paranormal or the idea of something like that could happen. And he did not, has never experienced something like that before. And quite frankly, I've never seen an apparition,
Right.
or any sort of physical spirit during the time that I've investigated. So he, he definitely had a life-changing experience. And it was really early on in the investigation. So it totally jacked him up for the rest of the night, man. Like, he just, on edge, and he had a really hard time calming him down. We actually went on the Bourbon Trail earlier that weekend, and we had some Buffalo Trace bourbons. We had a couple of shots of that shortly after that experience, just to try to calm him down.
I was gonna ask that. Was he nervous the rest of the night? Like his
Yeah,
nerves
yeah,
completely shot?
he was shook, man, for sure. But he's the only one in the entire group that saw something that entire night. And even to this day, when I talk to him, we still kind of talk about that a little bit, and that experience, and how it's impacted the way that he kind of views life, and I guess death as well too.
Well, I was going to say, especially as a skeptic, because I've never had an experience. Well, I've never had an experience that I can prove was something paranormal, which I talk about in the very last episode from last year. But I want to believe, like, I'm that guy that I'm looking to find that proof or that evidence for whatever it is. I'm not saying it's the afterlife. I'm not saying it's spirits. I just want to know what it is. So, I'm that guy that's looking for that. So to have that sort of experience, especially as a skeptic on your first time in, yeah, that would absolutely wreck me. Like, I'd either be super ecstatic and be like, dude, I saw it. That's me, this guy right here. Or I'd be like, deuces, I gotta go. Like, and I don't know how I would react. So
Yeah.
Man.
To your point about wanting to believe, and there's definitely something to be said about the idea that we just don't understand, what's all the things that are happening in this world. There's no way that we do. And it's okay to go through life and not be interested, about what happens to us after we die, or our loved ones, and all the things, the mysteries that are kind of happening, even in the space of extraterrestrial, evidence that we're kind of getting right now, which is a whole nother conversation. But there's a lot of things happening that I think we're just kind of waking up to, or just kind of realizing, and our technology is catching up to a point that we're able to capture this stuff and really start asking questions, about what this is, and, how we can better understand it. Because if we're not asking those questions and we're not trying, then we're really missing an opportunity to just kind of better understand, life and all the nuances that kind of come along with it.
Absolutely, man. That's really well said, because you know you you speak to a lot of people that are really into the paranormal, and it's just ghosts, ghost, 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 and they only ever talk about it from a paranormal, from a believer standpoint or someone of faith, but we don't know what it is. There's no wise man or holy man can explain it properly and completely. No scientist can explain it properly and completely. So I think it's, especially little groups like the one you worked with, and other groups like it, I think they're doing a lot of the grunt work to really try to figure out what it is, and to document it and to share it with other people. And that's really commendable to me. Like, I love the idea of being part of something like that, and getting out there and trying to share it with the world and open people's eyes. Because even if you don't catch anything, that's still proof of something, whether it be, that nothing's there or that nothing happened. I don't know. It's
yeah, that's
like
a
that
great
idea.
point. I kind of mentioned the residential experiences that we had with the ghost hunting group, and a lot of times people wanted us to report back, like, hey, what you're experiencing is just normal things that happen in the house, and there's nothing to worry about, which was pretty common to happen as well too. So
Yeah.
just providing that kind of reassurance that hey, everything's okay. And even if you are experiencing something here that is unusual, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be harmful to a family or whatever it might be. So I think a
Absolutely.
lot of people in general just want to know that they can be reunited with their loved ones after life. And I think, for most people, that's, if you talk to a skeptic or someone that really isn't, open to believing the idea of ghosts or spirits, like, everyone can relate to that. Like, if your grandparents have passed away, you want to see those, those people again at some point, whether in this life or an afterlife or a different life again, and kind of reunite. And we all want that. That's I guess a goal for all of us, in humanity, to be reunited with our loved ones.
I guess everyone's just looking for a peek behind the veil.
Mm.
They want to know, at least know that there's something there, something to look forward to when it's their time, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Um, there's another couple of fascinating things about Waverly, before we get too off topic, that I wanted to
yeah.
make sure that we got in here. As mentioned, there was 50, 60,000 people that died at
Mhm.
Waverly Hills. And a big part of, I guess, the lore of Waverly Hills is the body chute. Are you familiar with
Yes.
that?
I was going to ask if you guys got into it and were able to walk some of it, because
Yeah.
I remember when they did it on Ghost Hunters, and I've seen other people that have gone into it. And I'm not going to lie, if I ever get a chance to go up there, I want to walk that for as long as I can before I lose my cool and run back screaming like a little girl. Because I know it'll happen. I know it will. But
It's absolutely worth going through if you are able to take a trip to Waverly Hills. And we went through it twice. We went through it the first time as part of the tour, basically, because she wanted us to go down the body chute with the people that work there, because there's all sorts of dangerous things inside of there, outside of the idea of any kind of spirits or ghosts
right.
tagging along with you. But it's incredibly dark. You can't even see the hand in front of your face. There's all kinds of things to trip on.
And it's at a
um,
slope too. Like, you're
it's
going
sloped,
down.
so your equilibrium is kind of off in general. And it's incredibly cold down there as well. It's not that far under the ground when you kind of look at it from the perspective of location and how they kind of built the tunnel, but it's unusually cold and throughout the entire thing. And the audio, the echo, you kind of get when you're walking down there, kind of plays tricks on your mind too. So there's all kinds of variables that you're experiencing, your body's experiencing, outside of the idea of something terrifying behind you or in front of you. So you're already just on edge in general, because it's a lot longer of a walk than you want it to be. You know what I mean? You kind of start and you're like, oh, it's not so bad. And you can't really see anything and you're kind of tripping on stuff and you're, you know, kind of falling all over the place because it's a weird angle. And then you're kind of scared, you know, because you're just, if you're familiar with Waverly, you've heard the stories of thousands and thousands of dead bodies being transported through this hallway, you know, and for your viewership, you know, the goal of the, I guess not the goal, but the purpose, a part of the purpose of this long tunnel was to carry the dead bodies, the deceased, down the tunnel to, you know, I guess the edge of the property to where they were out of view of the folks that were still alive.
Yeah, it was
So
a
that,
morale thing. They didn't want to bum
yes,
people out by
morale.
seeing, you know, oh, hey, there's Johnny from 6B up on the second floor. Like, holy crap, there he goes. So,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Yeah, you did. That will totally wreck your morale. That's a great way of putting it. But that was a big part of the purpose, at least, or part of the functionality. I should say, I
right.
don't know if it's the right word. That ended up being what it was used for. So, but yeah, it's an incredibly long tunnel, man. Like when you get about halfway, you're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to be out of this tunnel. Like, how far? How far are we from the end here? Because you can't really see it until you get to the halfway point, and you kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, you know, so to speak. And so anyway, the first time we went down the body chute, it was a big group of us. So there was no way to capture audio, you know,
Right.
effectively with everyone talking and, you know, cutting up and laughing and being terrified together and being a part of the tour because the lady that was the owner of the building at the time was kind of talking about the history of the building and experiences. So a little later on in the evening, we're kind of wrapping up, or before we wrapped up, we went back through the body tunnel again. There was, I think, 3 of us total. My friend didn't join me on the body chutes walk. I think he was still pretty messed up from his previous experience. So it was
I
just 3 of
can't
us
blame him.
from, yeah, from the group. And so yeah, it was much earlier in the morning, maybe around 4 a.m. kind of walking through there again, and we were trying to be really quiet, you know, and kind of just experience the body chute, I guess in its native form without much
Right.
talking and kind of just walking through. And man, it was extraordinarily scary. I personally didn't have anything happen to me in the body chute, but an investigator that was behind me, because I was kind of in the middle, which worked out great because I didn't want to be first or, or last. So I was fortunate enough to be in the middle of the group. So something terrifying happened. I could run one way or the other, you know, and be safe, I guess. But anyway, the person behind me claims that she felt someone put a hand on her shoulder while we were walking, and we were kind of in the middle, you know, at that point too, where you kind of see the exit, and you'd gone too far to go backwards. So she screamed, and I screamed. The person in front of me screamed, and we all kind of just, you know, split up essentially, and trying to figure out what the hell was going on. You can't see anything. I couldn't see them, so you know, we're
Wow.
stuck on top of each other, and we're turning our flashlights on, trying to see if there's anyone in the tunnel playing a trick on us, and you know, there's anything happening. And there's no one else in the tunnel.
Wow.
Um,
Did she say it was like they were like it was like a comforting touch, or was it like an aggressive, like pushing her down, or
he said it was a cold touch. It was like a freeze. It's already freezing in there as it was. And the time of year
mm,
that we were there was pretty cold. I think it was during fall or winter. And so she said it felt like an ice cube essentially. Like it was clearly a hand from what she said, and it was as cold as, you know, an ice cube. You know, so
cold
it was
as
very
death?
startling. So yeah, so she was freaked out, and she was relatively new with the group too. But you know, she's kind of person that has a really good head on her shoulders and a very balanced personality, not one to get worked up over nothing. So I very much believed her as she said that something happened. There was no doubt in my mind that she was not exaggerating or, you know, anything else. So at that point, we were pretty eager to get the hell out of there. So we were briskly walking towards the exit. And shortly before we got to the exit, we saw what looked like a shadow pass in front of the exit, you know, because you kind of see that, you know, the moonlight essentially is
Right.
lighting the hole in the exit area. And it looked like something kind of passed over the exit. So I couldn't tell whether that was outside the exit or something inside, but I was very eager to get to the exit to see if there was someone from our group that was waiting for us,
Right.
or if a car had drove by, because the exit's kind of in a weird spot where, there's trees and kind of a tree line in the distance and things that could have, been the case instead of, something paranormal, but we were not able to figure out what that was. So that was the extent of our experience in the body shoot, as they call it. And no one else in our group had too much or had too much else happening on their tour at the body shoot, or their experience, other than hearing some whispering, but we were not able to capture that on audio, unfortunately.
Well, still though, man, like, one, a personal experience, like, they're hard to back up because it's a personal experience unless it's happening to multiple people. But then all of you being able to see the shadow walk across the exit, and like you said, it could have been lights from a passing car, could have been someone walking the property you didn't know about. It even could have been like a cloud going over the moon, especially since you mentioned the moonlight. But
yeah,
still,
I thought maybe it was a deer at first too, but who knows what could have been.
it's still just the fact that it happened, and
Yeah, and
everyone
having something
saw it.
touch you, having
Yeah.
something touch you that's not there, it'll mess you up, man, for sure.
No. So that was towards the end of the night. Did you guys have anything else happen while you were there?
That was, I think, the extent of the really interesting things that happen. Being touched in the body shoot, seeing seeing things break the laser plane shadows, essentially kind of break the plane within the patient rooms during in the hallways, was definitely the most fascinating. We captured some EVP work. My friend seeing a visual of something
The
that was
nurse,
probably the
yeah.
highlight of the night. And but for the most part, what we all experienced while we were there was voices just outside of the area that you're investigating. So, and this happened with everyone that was there, and it's a very common experience. As you're walking down the patient rooms, through the hallways, and you're hearing whispering, you're hearing talking, you're hearing a conversation that's happening, and you can't make out what's being said, but it's clearly that something, audio is happening around you, and you get to that point where you think that you'll be able to discover someone or something, and then it's a little bit further away, and it's a little bit further away. And that was just the case all night long, where we were just like trying to catch, whatever it was that was in front of us. And you could run down there, to where it was, and it'd be somewhere else. It'd be behind you. It was just, we were always just trying to play, game of tag or game of catch with these whispers all night. And that was pretty fascinating for sure.
I think that would probably creep me out more than the shadows down the hallway, because at least they're down the hallway. But if
Yeah.
you're hearing whispers and they keep
Yeah, and they're
changing where
close.
you're hearing
They're
from,
close. Yeah, they feel like they're in the rooms next to you, and you shine your flashlight in the room. And all these rooms are connected. They're not like segregated to where you have kind of your own room. You can, there's a balcony outside where these windows, they're putting in are, so you can walk, from room to room to room down the hallway, or through the rooms, or through the balconies, and they're all kind of connected, and they're just constantly out of reach, and it's pretty scary. And it kind of increased in intensity throughout the night too. So by the time that we were getting ready to wrap up, the whispers were turning into louder conversations. It's almost like they were getting irritated with us being in their space throughout the night. And that was kind of the impression I got, was that they were ready for us to go. And quite frankly, at the end of the night, I was exhausted and it's kind of, mentally jacked, and I was ready to go too.
nice. What would you say was like the overall, like, you get a feel for a place, you walk in and you instantly know, like, oh, this is a good place, or this is a bad place. You get those impressions that you can't define why you get them, but you get them. What was your overall impression of Waverly when you got there, and did it change throughout the night?
Yeah, it's a great question. I knew the history of the building going into it, because I'm the kind of person that likes to research things before I get involved with
Yeah.
anything, especially at something that requires the amount of work and effort to film the entire building and, make sure that we do an adequate job while we were there. And my overall impression of the just the vibe was sadness. And I don't know if just knowing how many people died in the building before you even got there plays a role in that, probably so. But just being there over the course of the night, I just felt sad for just knowing how sick people were that were in there, and their families weren't allowed to visit them, and the lifespan of someone that was a resident at the sanatorium was less than a year in most cases, just a couple of months. It
Wow.
wasn't very long. So, you show up with your belongings, and that's the place that you're probably going to die. And I think a lot of the residents knew that. And, there was a lot of experimental surgeries that were happening, that were allowed to happen somehow at this place when they were trying to bring relief and comfort, at least to some extent, to the residents that were there. That people died in pretty terrible ways in that aspect as well too. So
Yeah.
um,
Wow. That's, yeah, I guess that would be kind of a bummer
yeah,
to just have that sense of sadness the entire time you're walking around. And so,
yeah, imagine being stuck there. If there's a reality to the idea of trauma and being stuck in a certain plane and not moving on to the other side, as they say, and kind
right.
of being stuck at Waverly Hills would be a pretty terrible existence for someone that has passed away and hasn't been able to make it to the next life or the other side or whatever it might be. So it
Yeah.
almost seems like in a lot of cases that, from my experiences there and from what I've seen from other groups, that the residents that remain in Waverly Hills really just want to be left alone. It doesn't seem like they are reaching out for help. It doesn't seem like they're interested in communicating with people to tell their story or contact their loved ones. It's almost like they just want to be left alone. And that's the impression I got, especially as the night went on. It was just like, I can't catch up to what's happening in front of me here. So maybe I'm not supposed to, maybe I just need to let it be.
I gotcha. So no playful spirits, like something you see in like a lot of old taverns and bars where they'll spin your cup away from you or knock it off the shelf. None of that. It's
Nothing, we put up some experiments like that. I think it's, I'm glad you brought that up, because we put, some rubber balls, a basketball and other things. And we set up cameras around those elements, food, and, other trigger objects that we've had success with in the past at other places. I mentioned Octagon Hall there in Bowling Green, Kentucky. We've had quite a bit of success with trigger objects at that location historically. So we tried that at Waverly Hills, and I was not able to capture anything with those objects, unfortunately. That was honestly, beyond the laser experiment, that was the one thing I was really kind of counting on to capture something that could say, look, here's concrete evidence that something is happening here that is unexplainable, and I'm able to rule out everything else that could be a variable here other than something completely paranormal as the result of what we're experiencing and what we're seeing.
yeah. I guess it definitely lends credence to your idea of the feeling that they just want to be left alone. Like if they're going to interact with stuff that they probably would have interacted with when they were alive, then yeah, maybe they're just kind of set and don't want anymore.
Yeah, I really hope that they don't turn it into condos or whatever the hell their big plans are. I think some investors own the property at this point, and who knows what they're going to do with the structure. But it just seems like the kind of place that doesn't need to have anything happen to it. I
Yeah.
mean, the idea of being able to investigate there, is already a stretch as it is. If the reality is that whoever is residing there still just wants to be left alone, then maybe that's what we should be doing instead of kind of stirring the pot as investigators. But we're on a mission to capture evidence and really kind of break open what's happening here, and the idea of an afterlife or things that we understand. So it's important work for sure, I think. And I wish I wish it got the respect that it deserves as far as the time
Yeah.
that
I
spent.
I agree with you on that one. And unfortunately, I think I think the overpopularity of the topic of, you know, what was it in the early like 2010s, there were so many ghost hunting shows out there that it just kind of flooded the social, you know, social spectrum, that everyone, you know, everyone was coming out of the woodworks with ghost hunting this and ghost hunting that. And you know, there was a lot of it that was kind of hinky, and there were, you know, some questionable stories and questionable things that happened, and I think that put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But
yeah, you're exactly right. You know, and to the point that we made earlier about extraterrestrial evidence, you know, we're seeing a lot of footage that's been released over the past couple of years from people that, you know, in the Air Force, people that are in the military, that hold a lot of prestige and respect. And when they tell you that they've experienced something, you know, you believe them. And now we have the Pentagon that has, you know, verified that the footage that we've received from some of these, you know, F-16s over the course of the past 10 years that's been leaked by New York Times as being valid. And so I feel like we're finally getting the respect that's deserved there for that question is, you know, are we alone in the universe, and are we being visited by beings, you know, from other worlds? And I wish that we had some sort of breakthrough moment or something like that when it comes to investigating the paranormal or the idea of spirits and ghosts, because I think that's an equally valid exploration for sure.
no, I think you're 100% right on that. That's you know, and man, yeah, and that's going to be hard now, especially in today's society, because everyone with a computer can edit something and throw digital effects onto something, or, you know, make it look like there's a ghost in the background of a video. And, you know, it's going to be tough. It would have to come from a very reputable source. You know, I don't know the government would release anything like that, because then you start getting into the religious aspect of it. And a lot of times they want to shy away from that as best they can. But yeah, it would have to come from somebody big, and it would have to be big too. It couldn't just be like smoke in the background. It would have to be, I would almost say it would have to be some sort of interaction that was caught and verified from multiple sources, multiple either camera or audio or something. So
yeah, absolutely.
But
I think we'll experience that hopefully at some point in our lifetime, but I guess we'll see how it plays out.
So awesome, man. Well, I've had a blast talking to you about Waverly, and if I ever get a chance to come up and visit, man, we'll have to at least I don't know if we can rent it out the whole night, but it'd be cool to take a tour. And if we got enough people, it'd be cool to go and do some overnight stuff there. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm 1000% down to revisit at some point, especially with the right people.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, let me know, man. And it's been a pleasure talking with you about this too. I have quite a few other interesting experiences that you know, I've had during my time with the Clarksville Ghost Hunters. So if you ever need a guest for anything in the future, I've got a couple more lined up for you.
Absolutely, dude. I'd love to have you back on. I love repeat guests, because it gives me a chance to tell more of their story, or for them to tell more of their story. And you know, it lets me hear more cool, exciting things that are creepy, exciting things, I should say, that have happened to people. So
absolutely.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, man, and we'll get with you again here shortly and see about getting you back then.
All right, Mr. Fields, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thanks, Chris. All right, guys. So thanks to everyone who turned in to the very first episode of our second season. I hope you enjoyed the show, and leave a comment below letting me know if you've ever been to Waverly Hills. And remember, you can find the show on most major platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Instagram. Just search for Tales from the Dark Roast. So wherever you're listening, leave us a comment, a review, or just hit the like button if you're enjoying the Dark Roast. Thank you for listening, and if you have a dark story you're willing to tell, then I have a pot of dark coffee I'm willing to share. I'm William Fields, and this has been Tales from the Dark Roast.